It's like Moses parting the Red Sea. Welcome everyone to tonight's Wednesday night live show. Joining us tonight is the one and only Greg Conley. You can find all of, like you guys really need to, but you know everyone has Greg's links to his social media, but they are in the header. If you're new to the show and you want to find out what he's up to, they're all in the header there. Also, this show will be broadcast on my personal Facebook page tonight, so please stick around, educate yourself a little bit on the topic of vaping. As a child, we're all told every story has two sides to it. So I think it's time that you guys listen to our side. What do you guys think? That's why I broadcast it on my personal page, because I want our side to be heard for once.
Agreed.
Sure. I am here literally for it. Yeah.
Public at large needs to know.
Yeah, so stick around, educate yourself a little bit. We got the one and only Greg Conley with us, and we'll help you guys better understand what's going on. At least get to hear our side of it, and not the. I don't want to say a Trump slogan here, but fake media.
And don't listen to hear Turk or whatever his name is either.
Oh God, I hope none of my friends know who that guy is.
Yeah. We're not gonna mention Mr. Dundee anymore in the show, please. Yeah. He's had his mentions for the
Does he actually talk about any other topics, or is he just focused on?
No, he's just now he's resorted to like cheap shots and just nonsensical arguments at this point. He actually has nothing left to say. He's a screaming, crying baby throwing a tantrum on the ground because we're smarter than him.
I've recently had an epiphany. Who cares?
Who cares?
Moving on.
All right. Before we get started with questions for Greg, we have him for an hour. Correct, Greg? We got you for an hour. Maybe we'll make you stick around. Yeah, that could change. We'll make you laugh. You'll stick around. But before we get into that, we're going to see how Tim's week has been going.
I think this might be the first week where I feel like I'm going to dramatically disappoint everyone, just because I don't have any real fantastic, amazing, cool thing that happened in my life. So I really don't want to go into the reflective conversation that I had earlier today with someone about did they remember the Muppet movie from 1971, The Frog Prince? Does anyone remember that movie? Does anyone remember Tamanilla Gruff, whatever her name was, and Melora and Sir Prince Robin? Anybody remember that?
Yeah,
I just remember
I'll shut up
two
now.
chuckling old men up in the balcony, and that's that was enough for me.
The two grumpy old guys,
violent.
Mortimer and whatever the other guy's name was. Anyway, no, nothing dramatic or amazing to talk about. It's just been a regular old work week. Just
Good.
Chop it away.
Incredible HOA hero stories.
No,
you didn't.
Okay, fine. You want one HOA story?
You weren't shot by a 12-year-old.
I'll give you an HOA story. Well, no, the 5-year-olds with squirt guns, their season has ended, folks. It's over. They need to go into hibernation until next spring. I got on the cameras to check the pool the other day, and I caught the pool company putting away all of our pool furniture, and I had no idea that we were closing the pool
already.
Yeah. Well, we would normally keep it open till probably the 1st of October because it's Georgia, so we stay warmer. But yeah, he put all of our furniture away. So I thought somebody stole it for 5 seconds until I saw who it was. And I'm like, darn. So the pool's closed. Unfortunately, now I can take a break. Now I can go back to normal HOA.
Darn, no larceny. Darn, really?
No, nothing dramatic. Sorry.
Exciting stuff.
Allie's going to excite us with her current week.
Okay, well, my week is always the same. Work, band. But I do have a funny story. So my son has been complaining that the headlights on the car that we just gave him are not bright enough at night, and he's having an issue. So I go on Amazon and buy these super expensive, like hyper white replacement bulbs. Turns out the kid has just been driving around with the first light, like the daytime
driver's light. Yeah.
was totally convinced that the regular lights were his brights, and the poor thing has been driving home from band with like no lights on.
I would poke fun, but I've been I think I drove a year with my emergency brake ever so slightly engaged, so he's okay. He's gonna be fine. It was 1986. 15.
I was 18 years old in 1986. Greg, how's your week going? Busy.
Wonderful. I'll just add in. I had the trio of great events in a short period of time when I first started driving. One, I believe the first night I went out, I did not turn on the headlights. Thankfully, cars flashed at me until I realized. 2, for a brief second, I was confused as to how to defrost. And 3, I live in the great state of New Jersey, which, thanks to Oregon changing their laws, is now the only state where you cannot ever self-serve your own gasoline. So one day, I was interning for a federal judge in Trenton, New Jersey. So this is a few years after I got my license, and did not realize that I had crossed over a bridge into Pennsylvania. Just thought I was over a bridge in New Jersey. And I pulled up, sat at a gas station for a solid 5 minutes, wondering why the blue collar guy standing by the Chevrolet was not coming to help me. And then he got in his car and drove away. And that's when I realized I was in the great state of Pennsylvania.
Didn't turn left in Jersey either. Very
I thought this is one where a good Samaritan came out somewhere and helped you pump your gas. No,
there was another story about that. That was Philadelphia at 3 a.m. When I was in college and visiting a girlfriend. Yes.
That one scared me quite a bit. And whoever helped you out at the end of that story is a bona fide hero. Cheers to
I
you.
hope you got a good tip.
Here in Alabama, if you can get a hold of a gas pump, and let's just say things have come a long way since I turned 16, but way back then, let's just say all of your errors as young drivers are forgiven. I've had a long road here.
Yeah.
No deaths or injuries, so it works.
Yeah, no.
Oh, no. This is great. I've learned my lessons, and now we have Deirdre's kids, hitting my car, and she's hit my car twice since we've been together in 12 years in our driveway. Greg's familiar with, the layout.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just say I'm winning.
Yeah. I had the same thing. Brand new truck, just paid for it, brought it home, 2 days in my driveway, and she hit it. And I'm like, how do you hit something in the friggin' driveway? All you got to do is back out. That's it. She goes, well, I backed out, forgot something, pulled forward, didn't realize I had my foot on the gas, and I hit your truck. I'm like, oh, okay, brand new.
Here's how you do that: yelling at your 15-year-old daughter that she's obscuring your rear view, and that's how you hit a car in the driveway. But God bless her.
Phillip, how's your week going, buddy?
My week is better than last. Thank you so much. I'll just briefly, I've had an on and off stress fracture in the bottom of my foot for a while, and I really managed to play teenager and do some handiwork around the place, and jump up and off ladders, and really dumb moves. So the boot is over there, and no, I'm not going to show it to you. And
we were trying to guess how you hurt yourself at the end of last week's show.
We told everyone that you stepped on a Lego.
I never thought I would pray for a Lego to step on. This was pretty dumb. Thankfully, the X-rays, no surgery is like a really, really good prognosis at this point. So thank you very much. And I'm taking it easy. I'm wearing wool socks. No, I'm not going to show you those either.
Yeah, don't show us those white legs of yours. This is the part of the show where my buddy Tim up there says hello to everybody out there in chat.
Challenge. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wednesday Night Live Show. You know what? We got somebody new at the top of the list. So this is a long-winded one, so I'm going to take a deep breath on this one. Lost World of JJ. And when I
Yeah.
read that, you know what it instantly reminded me of? Land of the Lost, a
Land of the
Cross
Lost.
Superstars hour on TV when we used to get home from school. Don't make me sing this song later. Let's see who else is in here. Tom Morowitz, good to see you, sir. How are you? I'm scrolling. Wait, where are the ladies? Where are the ladies?
Where are the
There's
ladies?
Pam Spraggins. So good to see you. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you. Steve's Vapes, plural. Steve is plural, and so are his vapes. Good to see you,
Yep.
Steve's Vapes, apostrophe S even. James R is in the house. There he is. Look, everybody, we got Captain Jack James R in the house. Good to
I just
see you,
have to say,
James.
God bless Australian THR advocates. You are the very best people.
Keep on
Relentless.
scrolling. Curtis Clemens, sir. Good to see you. How are you? I saw you last week. You were here for a bit and then you ducked out. So good to see you back. Rifleman, roll your R's, everyone. Rifleman is in the house. Addy Tooney. He's now back to Addy Tooney. He's not just Tooney. Maybe that was his burner account he was on last week. Yeah. You know, you gotta keep a low profile when you're out there on the internet. You don't want people to find you.
Is Addy short for Addison? I need to know this at some point.
I don't know. He can probably confirm or deny that for you. Or Adderall, one of the two.
I think it's probably the former, but just
Okay. Michael Redfern, great to see you, sir. How you been? I know I'm getting close to the bottom here. I'm scrolling as fast as my little Swifty hand can go. I think that's pretty much it. Hold on. Let me just take one last look. That's it. Good to see everybody.
That is it.
That is it.
Right off the bat, everybody in chat, if you have a question for Greg, please start your post or your comment with a Q. This way, Tim and I can star it, and it's much easier for us to find during the I don't know, what do you want to call it? The viewers questionnaire. I don't know, but we'll come up with a name for it someday. I don't know. But we're gonna start. I want to start you off with a little bit about what's going on in the UK, Greg. So I don't know how much you know about what is taking place there, but with the UK government set to ban disposable vapes as early as next week, I wanted to get your take on what is taking place in the UK with disposables, and if this will affect the the UK stance on the open market system. Sorry, I've been drinking.
So, no, I don't think this will impact how the UK views vaping generally. Yesterday, one of the Wall Street analyst companies that receive far too much money for their stock advice put out a report. And while I'll say in a bit, while I disagree with the underlying assumptions that they make, what they did say is something that should be repeated in the media, which is that for most of the large tobacco companies, the only one they noted was Imperial that has some disposables, that this is a net benefit for the major tobacco companies. PMI doesn't really get involved in the vape market, so it was neutral for them. But BAT in particular, which has been on a tear about disposable vapes worldwide, they stand to benefit from this in the eyes of the Wall Street analysts who are paid to say whether or not people should invest in companies. In reality, while I have not fully investigated this and felt the products with my hands, there was another country that banned disposables. And as far as I'm aware, there was a very quick innovation in that sector where you are able to reuse the battery and it essentially becomes a pod system.
Right.
I would like to see those products because I'm interested in more environmentally sustainable alternatives and such. But that is what's going to happen in my mind very quickly in the UK. Of course, there's going to be, just as there is today, there's going to be an illicit market. And it's going to remain for a very long time. Even when you can get disposables, people in the UK have been saying, well, I don't want to abide by this 2% nicotine limit nor the 2 milliliter pod limit. That should be changed as a way to, at the same time, if they're going to ban these products, they should maybe open the door to the ones that are more environmentally sustainable and ones hopefully that won't fall into the hands of youth. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you end up with a moral panic. You have
Yeah.
bad policy making that follows, but this is an industry that is particularly good at innovating, and the EU system, for all of its flaws, it is not like the PMTA process in any way.
Right.
Okay.
Not even
Yeah.
remotely.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of concerned because their stance has been so stern right now with getting rid of them, and I was just worried that with what's going on here in the U.S., that may kind of set the wheels spinning with them deciding on trying to do what we're doing here.
Yeah, so also note that the UK, I don't know how credible the reports that it could happen next week are, because it feels like every month, every 3 weeks, there's a story about the UK. They're going to ban junk food advertising. They're going to ban this kind of alcohol. They're going to restrict this or that. And a lot of them don't come to be. So I don't know if that is a case of the British press getting ahead of themselves to make a headline, or next week, some ban could come down and there'll be a limit. But ultimately, I think the youth vaping will not get out of control any further. That's my hope. I think that the companies over there have some really great ideas. Hopefully, if they're going to go to this step to ban disposable vape, well, alongside that, I think the UK VIA has proposed 12 or 13 different policy ideas, all better than bans. But hopefully they'll actually enact some of them. If you're going to ban a product, then you should at least be able to say, well, what remains if you sell to a minor, you are in much greater trouble than you are today.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like they're shifting the reason for the sudden ban between environmental concerns and waste versus youth appeal, and doing it in a way that's according to who might be listening and who's. And it seems very strange to me, but I think actually it might be. Is it not Elf Bar that is coming out with a sort of like a disposable that you basically like a pod system? Anyway, I think it might be Elf Bar that's creating the product you were talking about. But it's very strange to me that they're I don't know, UK press between the Guardian. It's very hard to know what to take seriously, because it all seems like National Lampoon sometimes as far as the UK papers go. What do you think was the root of this? Because it does feel a bit like the disposable panic, where it's, for a while it seemed very like things were going well, and then suddenly one day Elf Bar put one too many milliliters in their product at some Morrison's and everything went to hell.
So in general, when you have an increase in youth usage, even if it's just experimentation, even if it's not that high in our minds, that can set off alarm bells for people who are skeptical about the technology. And when I was over in the UK last January or December, it was remarkable, the change over 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, when I was in the UK, there were vape shops, and you went into a corner store, convenience store, and maybe they had hidden alongside the cigarettes that are behind the wall advertisements for a couple cartridge-based vaping products. But when I was there, the stores all in the tourist areas that used to have walls and walls of Big Ben pins and t-shirts of whatever the heck there is to see in London, they instead had walls and walls of disposable vape products. Some of them were even candy / disposable vape shops. And hell, maybe all those shops do check ID and they're great retailers. But when you not only have reports coming in of increases in youth use, when you have politicians who are very apt to agree with environmental concerns over business or public health concerns, and when you're seeing it, when you walk to work, when you take your kids to school, when it's no longer just, oh, a new vape shop moved into town, oh, there's a candy / disposable vape shop every 4 blocks, that can lead to bad policy. But I am hopeful that thanks to if this happens, the innovations will stop the adult smokers from being impacted, and that maybe, just maybe, if they're going to go to the lengths of banning a whole class of products, that you'll see some better rules alongside that for those that remain.
All right, you're going to go to Tim. Go ahead, Tim.
Makes sense.
I mean, I
And
really
also,
don't.
sorry, Tim.
Yeah,
also,
go ahead.
the most important thing for the UK coming up is the FCTC meeting that's going to be, I believe, in Peru. I might try to get to that in October. And we are hoping and relying on the UK, New Zealand, a couple other countries to stand up and say, we object to worldwide bad rules on vaping products that will force us in the UK to ban more products than we want to ban. So it stinks that the UK going through with this, but the real test of their commitment to vaping products is going to be next month, and I feel decently confident that they will stick behind them.
Yeah, so I guess that's what sort of like, I guess this is an opinionated question, or a question that constitutes an opinion. But do you feel like it's maybe a two-parter then? Do you feel like maybe with their effective endorsement of vaping as far as a form of tobacco harm reduction and effectively putting it in hospitals and being sort of open-armed about the idea of vaping, do you feel like their position has kind of walked them into or painted them into some corners or created a pickle situation where they sort of feel the pressure from around them just because everybody else seems to be so strong-handedly against it in other countries? And then on top of that, do you think that maybe there's a chance that that their ongoing policy around vaping could assist, like you said, in maybe some different stances on vaping within the U.S.?
So unfortunately, I always think back to Shepard Smith on Fox News when he was interviewing Tony Abood 2 years ago this week, where he said, he pretty much implied that UK lungs are different than the US lungs. And that is the treatment that the FDA and CDC have given the Cochrane Group, UK Public Health, etc. So unfortunately, there's not going to be a sea change in the United States. This is going to take a very long time if we ever win formally. And I am hopeful that the UK, when they explain this, that as somebody else noted, that it will be more on the environmental side, because you can tell policymakers, you can tell legislators, well, they decided on environmental grounds, not because they thought these things were public health hazards.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I am hopeful that we will, in the United States, it would be nice if we had a market that was functional and legal. That's going to be a big impediment to what I'm going to say. But my hope is that in the United States, we can figure out disposable battery recycling. But it is extremely difficult when you're talking about transporting used lithium-ion batteries in every state in the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I would really trade our current state in the U.S. as far as vapor products and reduced harm novel tobacco products, and I would tolerate a ban on disposables to have a vape-friendly environment like the UK. So that makes quite a bit of sense, actually. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Allie, go ahead, Allie.
Well, I saw another article about this in another publication. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but there was a quote in there that was saying like that banning these vapes will have the opposite effect of, and that's what we're seeing everywhere. So I think that, you know, the more that you ban something, the more attractive it becomes, and the more people kind of want to get their hands on it. So do you think that, you know, idea will resonate in their decision-making process? You think that maybe they will think twice about banning them, looking at the disaster that banning things has made everywhere else?
So it can be difficult to draw that straight line from if you ban all flavors, you have an increase in smoking, versus if you ban a particular class of products that we don't know a great deal about. We only have a couple of years of survey data regarding how they've impacted cessation and usage in the UK. But I'm hopeful that they'll listen to reason. But if not, the good news is there's innovation. The only question then becomes if they make this about youth, and because the innovation is so good that you don't have any changes, that the UK doesn't stop the candy vape shops from operating, that the UK doesn't stop hairstylists from having a big pile of disposables for sale. And you either stop that or you properly license it and you fine people when they break the law. You have to choose something.
Right.
And it remains to be seen whether or not the UK's policing is going to be good enough, because that's what we see in New York, New Jersey, and several other areas that have banned flavors, where if you ask a vapor, they don't know anything about it because every vape tobacco shop continues to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had some people tell me that like they get them from their Uber driver, like they have like that, and like they can get disposables, and I'm like, well, they're cheap to make, they're easy to rebrand, and that will never stop, regardless of how many times you try to ban it. It's never going to stop coming in.
The same Uber driver that gets you fentanyl and pure cane sugar, I'm sure of it.
No, that's happening here, Allie, because I had a couple of friends of mine say that they noticed right when they walked into the car, they finished blowing out their vape, and the guy, that was the first thing the driver said, "Do you need an extra pen? I got vape pens." And I was like, "Oh God."
I have a question. As far as the public,
you're up, Phillip.
As far as the youth appeal, I understand that. I can see that. Candy stores, when I first read about that happening in the UK, I thought, oh, okay, this has got to be a one-off, ridiculously obscure example. But apparently it is happening, and I imagine it's how things go when you have a free market and you're given license to sell these products as harm reduction alternatives to cigarettes. Some people are going to just cash in on that, and lo and behold, we have ice cream parlors and vape shops. Not a great combination. But my question is, are any of these disposables, and we have knockoffs and we have counterfeits, two very different things, as we found out. Knockoffs are just products that look like products that people buy quite a bit of, and then you have counterfeits, which I've not actually encountered one, but is actually a product that is supposed to be the product that it looks like. Has there been any documented, other than them tasting like crap, has there been any documented issue with people becoming unwell from having like some just junk disposable?
So no, and one, a Twitter user revealed to me, I had bought a Puff Bar at the time when there was a moral panic about those, and I posted, "I'll buy a Puff Bar to try it," and I posted the packaging, and someone replied, "Oh yeah, that's a counterfeit one." We are extremely fortunate in this market, and I used to go to this point during EVALI, but no journalist ever wanted to explain.
Yeah.
The reason why we're now at 15 years of this technology with nobody dying, except when somebody decided to use it with THC oil and vitamin E acetate, is that the ingredients that are used in these products are so dirt cheap. The most expensive part is the nicotine, and that's only 5%, 2% of what goes in it. As a result, you don't have people saying, well, the propylene glycol costs too much, so I'm going to use ethylene glycol. That doesn't happen. Yep. So no, as far as I know, there has been no vaping product that has ever had to be recalled or the subject of a media release because it was sickening people.
Yeah, that was my feeling, but it's the first place. I've been kind of researching disposables ever since they became such a big deal, just because I was trying to figure out. People are always asking me, and strangely enough, my mother, among other 70-plus-year-old people, they are really doing well with the disposables, especially ones that aren't terrible. And there are a lot of them out there, and a lot of them are terrible. And it seems like there are fewer and fewer that are reliably good. So I've been just trying to figure out which ones are reliably good. Short's version is the first and only either B stock or counterfeit disposable was a Flume Pebble that, of course, I bought in a store in San Diego right after or shortly after they banned all flavors. And immediately upon taking that first puff, I knew right away it was, used, or God knows what else. But yes, the worst, I think, I'm glad to hear the worst is it's just going to taste like junk.
Yeah. For those that know out there, Dean is the one that brought up this topic to me, because Dean Adams is in the UK, and he brought the article to me, and he's been talking about disposables for quite some time and having to deal with it out there. So real quick
it's
question.
tough because if you would look at this issue strictly as what is good for the adult smoker, the 2 milliliter disposables are a little different in the UK. They're a little less convenient than the ones we have here, but the ones we have here are unbelievable. Like if we all had those disposables, the ones that can last people, for me, sometimes 9-10 days, because I just am not chain vaping. If I could have had that in 2010 instead of my little RN0081, I would have jumped on it. But sometimes you can get nostalgic for the old days, but you don't realize how complicated the old days were. But you also have the self-preservation instinct where you say, well, I want to continue to be vaping 20 years from now, and what's the best thing for it today? So it's a balancing line or a balancing walk, because the products are so darn good now.
Yeah, they are, and no one is ever going to miss this in the classroom or mistake it for a thumb drive. Thank you. I have to bring that up because one day we're like, oh, we can't tell if it's a thumb drive or a vape, and well, let's just say it's a vape, and I'm pretty sure that's
the original blue looked like a cigarette, period. So any kid that would have been carrying that around back in that, which they didn't back then, because they actually thought it was really stupid. So it's just funny.
Well, I think that was by design.
I think too, the brighter the colors, the better, because if it's black or silver, it's way easier for a kid to conceal that. Yeah.
I know this question is kind of wishful thinking, Craig. So and this is about disposables. With the U.S. market being such a large player, 8.28 billion into 2023 in sales. Could the industry force China to set some sort of recycling or buyback program for disposable devices? Is that something that our market, the vape shops, I'm not going to say convenience stores because I think they could give a shit, but do you think it's something that we could force China to set up some sort of program to kind of take away that argument by the naysayers that we're destroying the environment?
So I could say that somebody who is a part of that $8.2 billion industry and brings in a nice little chunk of that, explored the option of figuring out battery disposable recycling, and came to the conclusion that it wasn't possible because they could not find the trucking companies that were willing to take loose or used products with lithium ion batteries and transport them. In the UK, I think their population density is 8 times what it is in the US. So you're not dealing with the land mass. You're having trucks that travel a shorter distance. There's probably more recycling centers because they're more of a progressive country. So I don't think that it is China needs to figure it out. It's some Americans have tried to figure it out. I think we may need to get, and this is something that China may be, I am working on something at the moment, try to get them to fund the kind of efforts that would be required, possibly state level legislation, which is dangerous and not my first choice by any means, but trying to, even without talking about vaping products in legislation, talking about lithium ion batteries, making the recycling of those products easier.
Well, it should absolutely be easier. I mean, I do think that that's the one downfall of disposables. I mean, ultimately, is just that there really is no methodology for disposing of them properly. Whether, it's everybody just threw it in a trash can all the time, you're still kind of dealing with the same thing. I guess my question to follow up to that would be, do you think that if they were to institute some kind of recycling program, knowing that bad actors find value in things that are somewhat on the teeter of black market, do you think instituting a recycling program would potentially also make that attractive to people that are a little bit more nefarious in their actions, kind of like copper wire or something like that? Do you think that it would constitute or lead to bad actors breaking into vape shops to steal the vapes just so they could recycle them and try to recoup some of that cash?
So I would hope not. I like the idea, at least I like the idea at first glance, of a deposit program. I think San Francisco or other cities do it with recycling bottles, where you pay the 10 cents or the 50 cents when you buy something and you get it when you return it.
Yeah.
I don't think that you would have to steal quite a lot of disposables to make stealing and recycling somewhere else worth your while. But it's clear that in this country, where especially in certain states, the environmental angle will play very well, that we need a nationwide search. So we need a nationwide solution. So yeah, there are certain areas of the country, I'm sure, where an individual shop can figure out, I can bring these batteries to you once per week, but 98% of the retailers are not going to give an employee, they're not going to also want the liability that comes along with the same reason why trucking companies are reticent to get involved, of coming and sending your employee to the recycling center every week, or the owner. 98% of them are not going to be interested in anything that doesn't make them money.
I think now most of them are shipped through train rails, right? They're no longer allowed bulk quantities of them like they used to before. I'm just remembering how quickly I used to get my 18650s from, I don't want to name the name of the website, but they used to come really quick. And then all of a sudden I got this email that said they can no longer be shipped through air, that everything was coming through train freight. So it may take a little longer. That's what I remember seeing.
This is a silly question, and I should have checked this out, but there are more than a few vape shops here that are trying to do the right thing. So they will, they're not, offering a deposit or any sort of discount, which would be great, but they are taking used disposables and bringing them in bulk to places like Batteries Plus, and in some cases, some Targets have large lithium-ion recycle bins. Is it likely that? Right. Is it likely that these disposable vapes are being weeded out and being thrown away? Because that would be something I suppose that would be good to know.
So the official answer is that we don't have the data on that, but the reality is that it certainly seems like most users are throwing them away. Or that
I have no doubt.
Some of them may be throwing them in recycling bins, not realizing that the people that pick up their recycling do not.
But no, if you take it to a designated lithium-ion battery recycling, like Batteries Plus is they have all things from splunking batteries to you name it, and they do take back large lithium-ion batteries, and they have the means to take whatever, I guess you could say, potentially hazardous recycling batteries and deliver them to wherever they are destined to go to be recycled. Are the disposable vapes that are being taken to those places actually being brought to the wherever they need to go to be recycled, or are they possibly being sorted out and trashed anyway? I'm curious what that is.
It's a great question. Mark Sliss in the chat certainly seems like he has experience doing it, which I don't.
Yeah, he said he figured it out on his own through his vape shop, but he does all of the carrying himself to the battery shop down the street. So he has a convenient outlet, but at least he's motivating people to bring them back to the shop to get recycled.
Yeah, and when you motivate people to bring things in to recycle, they usually end up buying something. So there is a benefit.
That's it.
There's another. There's another.
I think it's Tim. Tim's or
Allison. Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's another company out of Dubai, ANS, that has a 99.3% like the recyclability rate for their disposable. It's made from like a cardboard. I don't know. They did a study on it. Cardboard cased product. 97.6 to 99.29% of their product is recyclable or recoverable. So, nice. I mean, I don't know how much it costs to produce something like that. And I know a lot of people here are just focused on getting something actually approved. So it's hard to focus on the bigger picture sometimes, but it is possible.
Well, but it's like a twofold situation, isn't it? I mean, we could talk about the lithium ion battery, element, but I mean, when you consider all the plastics that are involved in that too, I mean, all that goes into the waste dumps, and it's not going anywhere. I mean, unless they burn it or something like that. And I'm sure they can't do that either, right? You can't burn lithium-ion batteries and plastic. It would be highly toxic.
To me, when you get into plastic, then you look at the stats, and it's all. If you look at New York City, all of their trash, so much, a giant amount, I forget the percentage, is construction materials. Right. So you can have everybody in the country vaping disposables, or every smoker switch to disposables, and the plastic waste would still pale in comparison to a whole lot of other industries.
But isn't that
mention what cigarettes do to the environment as well?
Well, that's true too. I mean, yeah, when you keep sticking your toes in the sand at the beach and you keep pulling up cigarette butts, it's pretty nasty. Like you feel like you had like your own sort of like metal detector. You're like, oh God, what did I find? And then it ends up being
Pall Mall,
a Pall Mall butt in between your big toe and your.
Yeah. You know what? A smoked Pall Mall is quite a commodity these days. I'm pretty sure you can get 5 cents for that somewhere. Kansas, maybe.
I got a question from our Allie over there. It's one of hers. What is the best piece of advice you ever been given?
So back in 2010, 2011, I got invited to go to the Global Tobacco Nicotine Forum, which I think is now just the Global Forum on Nicotine. It's in South Korea this year, potentially this week, and sadly I am not there. But I went, and it was great. It was my first real opportunity outside of 1 or 2 U.S. conferences where I got to meet people who were actually employed in the tobacco and nicotine industry, and not just big tobacco, but people who sell leaves and sell packaging materials and all of this. And there's a guy who is a consultant to different tobacco companies, mostly in the cigar pipe tobacco space. And we both hung back in the South African hotel one day while everyone else was on a field trip. And I was saying, like, I'm a volunteer. Like, this is great. I love this industry, but what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to graduate law school soon. I need to have a real job. And he said to me, you know what? Screw it. Just try and give it 6 months and see if it works out for you and if you can pay your bills, because you'll regret it if you don't. And just a couple of years ago, I got his address around Christmas time, and I sent him like $100 basket of meat because I heard he was a meat eater, and with a thank you card saying thanks for telling me just try. And that was simple advice, but I needed it at the time because I was not confident, because this industry in 2011, 2012, we didn't the pessimism around FDA that I certainly have pushed and understand and believe in was that, well, this may only have 2 years left and then it's destroyed. And you didn't know at the time whether or not the big companies were going to embrace vaping and harm reduction or if they were going to bury it.
Yeah. Right.
I would like to also send that man.
Cheers to this man. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I send him a meat basket?
En route. Yes. Encouragement goes a long way.
All right, Greg. Your favorite line from any movie?
So this came up on Twitter the other week, and my answer was Garbage Day from Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. It stuck with me. I probably watched the movie when I was like 10 years old and just laughed my ass off watching that scene, probably rewinding it multiple times. And it just sticks with me. I'm sure I could come up with something more meaningful, but that's the real answer.
That's a great answer. So you saw the sequel first and then the original?
Well, if you see the sequel, you actually don't need to see the original because it is 45 minutes of the original, because I know the backstory of it because I'm a nerd. There was a consultant who looked at, I believe it was family home videos through their more horror division, what their top selling videos was, and Silent Night, Deadly Night was at the top of the list. And he said, why don't you just make a sequel and you can just use 45 minutes of the original and just cheap out, and you'll sell 75,000 units or 50,000 units. And that's exactly what happened.
It's kind of like Evil Dead versus Evil Dead 2, only they, just let's say I love both of them. But yes, I remember huge hits on Betamax, VHS, and everything else. But that's a good answer. We apologize for nothing.
All right, one more before we get back to our serious questions. If you could put a franchise restaurant in your house, what would it be, Greg?
From
Jersey. I'm kind of curious to hear.
There's a restaurant down the road run by like a Turkish dude, and they make excellent gyros. I would be significantly fatter if he was in my living room. But he makes some. I've been around to the Middle East and such, and it's a quality gyro.
Yeah. So you'd be good with that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
I think for quite a while. He makes other stuff too. It's a very large menu. I live in an area where you have lots of hole in the wall kind of fast food ish places.
Yeah,
Nice.
shawarma, gyros,
I will
breakfast.
soon have a
lunch,
proper backdrop and everything. And that's been the stress of the last month is actually buying.
I have to agree with that one. I would say if I could have a gyro show up on my doorstep every day for like the next 2 months, I'd be just fine, as long as it's a good one. There are a lot of cheapies out there, but you can find a good one. It's home.
Hey, that sauce is the bomb. I don't know what it is, but that
Tzatziki
sauce.
sauce.
I'll say IHOP because I really enjoy their cupcakes with sprinkles. No, those cupcakes. They're
Lord,
pancakes.
Andrew Donaldson's
Pancakes
not
with
listening.
sprinkles.
Very adult and manly eating option.
I would love a fucking IHOP in my house. That would be just the best.
I like IHOP, but I can't say that because Andrew Donaldson is listening somewhere. You know he is. But I have to ask you something. Gyro, feta or no feta? Because this is a crucial point.
So it is not something that they usually add to the one at the local restaurant, but I have had it with feta and it is good. I'm a feta fan.
I worked at a restaurant where I had to put my hands in this brick of feta and make a house salads. I was 15. They were using me as slave. Anyway, the point is, whenever I went into the kitchen to the salad stand to start making the salad, the entire kitchen would break out in a rendition of Blue Oyster called "Don't Fear the Feta." And then, of course, the need to suppress the gag reflex kicked in, and it was hard that training right there. So let's just say no feta. Thank you very much. Next,
I'll note someone in the chat said shawarma every day. When I was in Iraq for 6 days in Kurdistan, nobody really spoke English, and they didn't really have English menus because they don't get many tourists, believe it or not. And so I pretty much subsisted off of chai tea and shawarma for the most of that 6 days because I knew if you saw the big slab of meat, they could make a shawarma, and they understood.
Hey Tim, say hello to that our new viewer.
Oh, we have a few. Well, we got a few. So, I mean, I didn't actually get a chance to say hello to Dean Adams, who kind of trickled in just after I got done. But we had a few others kind of show up on their landscape here. We got Don Ioko, Don Scirocco is in the house. And hold on, we have Mark Sliss is here today, folks. We did mention Mark. So good to see you, Mark. Good to see you, Don. Good to see you, Dean. I'm sure and Peggy at E6 Source came in too. So good to see you.
And again, for anyone, any questions for Greg, please just put the Q there and I will make sure to star them and we can bring them up here in a few seconds. But I think Allie's up, right? Or
good enough for me.
I'm up.
Hey, you're up.
Okay. Well, I mean, what do you think, Greg, is the most pressing issue right now in the industry, aside from the new civil money penalty fines that have just been raised through the roof?
The PMTA bills at the state level. In October, it is going to be illegal to sell any post August 8th, 2016 vaping product that is not pending a PMTA, so only tobacco-derived nicotine products in the state of Oklahoma as well as Louisiana. Oklahoma is probably not going to have any enforcement because they took Reynolds' advice and passed a law with no funding mechanism. Good luck with that. But Louisiana, they also raised their vapor tax, and I believe they put the first $600,000 towards enforcement. Louisiana is not much of a rule-following state, so there's going to be plenty of resistance. But vape shops, unfortunately, have the largest target on their back, just as with FDA. They just look up vape. And unfortunately, in the context of CMPs, you had companies that took the advice to be legal, to register, and lo and behold, had they not registered, chances are FDA would not be knocking on their door.
Right.
But the PMTA bills at the state level are major. Because they do give capabilities usually for large fines to retailers, wholesalers, etc. And that is what I am working on getting lobbying funding for 2024, because that's how legislators don't understand this. When they only get visits from lobbyists that support it, they think, oh, it's a pro-business kind of thing. Maybe one or two people will show up at the hearing that's given 24 hours notice, and they think, oh, that's just naysayers. And it's a serious issue, particularly in GOP states. Even though they are pro small business and such, if they have the companies that give $50,000 per year to the state party, they listen to them. And if they don't get huge volumes of responses, and getting huge volumes of responses can be difficult when people are so confused about what the hell these bills are doing, that's the threat that is out there. And it's a threat that I hate, because I prefer fighting alongside everybody. I prefer fighting to campaign for tobacco-free kids, American lung, American cancer, the random people that show up in white coats with their stethoscopes still on. And this ends up being intra-industry drama. And it's a drama that I'm willing to fight because it's for a good cause, and they get paid well enough to deal with me and deal with my shit. But I don't think it is productive in the long term, because you end up with all these large companies going up and talking about, as we've seen in the media, fentanyl and vapes and targeted to children and increases in youth usage, even though there's been decreases, big decreases. So that's the threat that I see. And along with the fact that FDA is still sitting on, I forget what the number is today, 40,000, 50,000 e-liquid PMTAs from back in 2016 or 2020. And those could drop. They could drop their denials any day. And some companies will have the resources. Hopefully, maybe we can get all 20 companies or 30 companies that get denied to all join up in the same lawsuit in the Fifth Circuit and share costs. But that's the threat as well, is that one day FDA will get to these additional PMTAs.
Yeah.
Real quick question from one of our viewers, Mark there. Great. Did you receive any feedback from Congressman Kim R.E.? The response from the VA.
So the story on that was that 9 months ago, the Department of Veterans Affairs posted a story to their website, a generic, it's the new year, you should quit smoking kind of story. And in there, they had a line that said, when e-cigarettes were first released, people thought that they may be a safer alternative to smoking. But it also turns out that they're addictive. So the implication, obviously, is these things are not as safe or these things are as dangerous or more dangerous than smoking. So, of course, I sent in what's known as an Information Quality Act request. It's from an executive order. There's no teeth to it, but in the departments are at least supposed to pay lip service to them, saying this goes against FDA and CDC advice on vaping, which is very clear. If you smoke, you can benefit your health by completely switching. And they ignored it. I sent a Freedom of Information Act request to see if there was any discussion of my email. Nobody forwarded it to anybody. It just landed in an inbox and was ignored. So I emailed them again. No response. Then finally, probably March or April, I went to my congressman's office, or called, and just asked for assistance. Congressman Kim likely has no idea. Maybe the letter to them passed through his desk in a giant folder of all the communications they send out to departments every day. But this was not Congressman Kim doing something because he believes in vaping. It's a general good government matter. That's how, in many ways, you can judge the effectiveness of a congressional office, where even if they don't like your industry, because Congressman Kim, he voted for the flavor ban 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. If you go to them with a good government matter, it's not saying don't vote for this bill or write a letter in support of flavors. It's saying I'm being screwed or messed with by the government. Please help. And his office assistants did the work. They had to write one letter. VA sent a letter back saying, this is not the appropriate avenue for a Freedom of Information Act request. It was not a Freedom of Information Act request. Then they said, we'll get a response by July. That never came. And then finally this week, they sent the response in. So it's a long journey to get what was a minor correction, but considering it's a government department, and hopefully now that they have been hit with this, and probably knowing the VA, multiple people had to approve the language that went up on that website. Hopefully they're aware of it, and the 2024 generic quit smoking in the New Year story will not mislead our veterans.
Yeah. Phillip.
I'm sorry. I'm baffled. I did not know that it flat out said vaping was the same as smoking. That is. Wow.
People thought that it was a safer alternative to smoking, but it turns out it's also addictive. So you see, we didn't actually say that it was not safer than smoking. We just said, yeah, people thought that. Maybe they were right. But they did. Thankfully, they did not play semantics, and they just delayed, but eventually fixed it.
Okay. Well,
and they fixed it in the sense that they included the advice from FDA and CDC that smokers should completely switch, while also adding in, well, there's no evidence that these things help people quit smoking, and there's been lung injuries and seizures reported. But hey, the CDC and FDA say if you completely switch, you may benefit your health. So there is no balloons and fireworks being set off in terms of a government department changing its policy. But I'll take, especially considering it is September, and unless there is a lung condition killing people, September is usually a slow month. So I'll take it.
I'm fairly certain that veterans have a higher smoking. There's a higher smoking rate among veterans in this country than non-veterans. I'm pretty sure that's substantial, is it not?
Oh yeah, and anytime you talk to a veteran about this kind of issue, you usually hear horror stories about the VA. So it is not at all surprising that they would be so resistant to any kind of change.
That's just terrible. Well, they fixed it to the extent that they changed the language, or at the very least, decided not to say without saying that vaping is no better than smoking. Gosh, it's just incredible that I missed this. So they did change the website language?
Yes, and the letter, if you go back, probably I'm guessing 10 tweets on my Twitter, the letter will be there.
I saw that. Well done, Prophet.
I'll take what I can get.
Did you have a question, or can I go ahead and?
Oh, I do, but
go ahead.
Oh.
No. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna defer to Tim because I interrupt too much.
All right, I defend that goal. I'm going to defend that goal.
Go ahead.
No, well, I guess this is kind of going off on a tangent, but I guess my question is, even with some of the things you just mentioned with the PMT at the state level, do you think that there would be any hope of seeing some unintended consequence analysis teams that start to formulate within the states? Obviously, if they, many are hell bent on banning things, but are there any legislative contingents that want to look at unintended consequences to the populational health? Because I certainly don't think that, if people could go back to smoking, it probably would be good for the states. I mean, they love their MSA money, but there's an article that I pulled from Allie's page, A Billion Vapors, that I wanted to talk about later when we get into the advocacy part. And I noticed that they had an analysis team kind of brought together. But why aren't we seeing any more of that as an opposition within the legislative levels, analysis teams that look at unintended consequences?
So part of it is that Oklahoma, Louisiana, Alabama, the industry was undefended other than CASA, AVM, sending emails, contacting the media. We got some people out to testify and such, but there was nobody day to day. That is a good idea, especially if it's like Louisiana, where you are pairing a PMTA bill with a tax, where you can say, well, if you're going to appropriate $600,000 for enforcement, why don't you appropriate some money to study unintended consequences? The problem then becomes that the natural place for that study is the Department of Health, and who staffs departments of health, people who want to ban things. Right. I do know that the FDA has awarded grants on studying flavors. One went to the Roswell Park Cancer Research Center, which previously endorsed flavor bans, but Masay Ganowitz, I'm sure I destroyed his first name, but he claims to be open-minded on the subject. He has published some literature on the subject. The 9 to 450 times less toxicants from 2014 was his study, so he's not a hack by any means. Right. But it really depends on how you look at the reality of the market, because if you study the effect of the state flavor ban on vaping products in New York and New Jersey, you're probably not going to see much of an effect because you can find what you want. Yep. Meanwhile, California, parts of California, I imagine, if that they are policing certain areas, particularly high income areas, are probably being policed very well. then it depends on how open is the illicit market. How in the world do you judge
Not
whether
Modesto.
it is an illicit market? With cigarettes, you could send people out on the street to pick up cigarette packs to see, is it stamped with the New York tax stamp? You can't do that with vaping products.
Yeah, you can't.
So that's my worry in the future, is that you're going to have studies come out that say, oh, well, in New York, the same number of people quit smoking with vaping in 2023 as in 2019. But that's going to be because people can get the products that they want.
Yeah, my son doesn't have a hard time whatsoever getting what he needs here in Modesto. I mean, he can just literally walk into just about every single vape shop and get whatever flavor he wants. There doesn't seem to be an issue at all. Real quick, with the current election coming up, how much is it going to be? How much difference is it going to be depending on who gets this seat? Is there going to be a change between the Republican and the Democratic Party?
So I don't like to get into politics too much, but I'm confident in saying that the chances of Donald Trump becoming president again are slim to none. He's likely going to be a convicted felon, possibly on house arrest by the time November 2024 comes around. And this is from somebody that encouraged vapors.
I wasn't using him as the example of winning the seat, but I'm just saying, as far as the two parties.
Well, no, it matters. No, I understand. It matters. That's one of the message I'm trying to get through to a small number of people that I can potentially influence, is that the candidate matters, and having a candidate under house arrest is not the recipe for success, particularly after we saw in 2022, all his candidates for Senate losing and continuing to be the minority party. Ron DeSantis, meanwhile, he vetoed the original PMTA bill in Florida. It was early in COVID I believe it was early in the COVID times or right before it, when he vetoed it. And it would have been very easy for Governor DeSantis to sign that bill, because the tobacco companies were all in support of it. It was their language. And they give plenty to the Florida GOP. That is part of the reason why the bill passed with a strong majority. But we put in front of him the economic numbers and made very clear, look, this will shut down shops. There will be stores going out of business. There will be news stories about this new law signed by Governor DeSantis that put these people out of business. And he saw through the nonsense and BS, and he vetoed it. So that's why I just made a small monetary contribution to him last week, because when it came time, he made the right choice. He was the easiest political choice. His Republican AG, his Republican legislators, mostly all supported it, and he supported it, and he vetoed it. Meanwhile, President Biden, good luck influencing when the menthol ban was first announced, there were efforts, not by me, but by others, to try to get through that message to the White House that this is not a political win. This is not a public health win. The public health effects are going to be not as large as you would expect. But that, from the looks of it, was ignored. Of course, it's now September and the menthol rule is not out, but I do expect that it will come out before the 2024 elections. Parties matter. And however, the bad news is that the Senate Republicans, just as several of them back in 2020 when Trump supported the flavor ban initially, they came out and said, yeah, that's a great idea. Because at that time, Altria, BAT, et cetera, were saying, oh, yeah, you can pause the market. You can take flavors off and we'll be fine. So there is always going to be the risk, whether it's Democrat or Republican in control of Congress, that you end up with a bill that directs the FDA to ban more products, or to that appropriates more money to FDA to go after disposables. That, unfortunately, is a dual party risk.
Yeah. The Novel Tobacco Product Act of 2024. I mean, it sounds the industry, a lot of the industry is not in favor of opening up the Tobacco Control Act for good reason. As much as we dream about the changes we can make to the Tobacco Control Act to make everything better, the sad reality when you need 60 votes in the Senate is that you're not going to get what you want when you have 75% of the American public believing these things to be harmful.
All right, this is the 1 hour mark of our show. So again, you can do this or you can just say pass. But here we go. The first song you remember learning all the words to was, and could you sing a few bars? Teenage, not the baby songs, not, you know.
So I recall, not as a teenager, but maybe 10 years old, buying the Beverly Hills Ninja soundtrack and probably playing the fighting song many times. I will decline to sing, but I will note the vaping industry had their one chance to see me sing, which was at probably a vape fest or vape con in Chicago. They had a side room, and one night there was karaoke. And I believe I sang "My Way" by Frank Sinatra. So
Yeah,
safe choice.
Billy Wester, Spike Bean, and a few others got to witness that event, and they are the fortunate ones.
All right, whoever's got video of that, send it into the show.
That's all I need to know.
We can play it.
Is there any video of that, Greg?
I don't think so. I think everybody was too focused on double fisting drinks at that time.
He made him sign an NDA before he sang.
Just double, not triple. So was it did it my, or is it all Cockney my way? I mean, Sid did.
I put emotion into
it. Steve's got a question for you. Steve's got a question for you. I think that's for you. So there is a lot of space.
Am I going to move to San Francisco? No.
I was there last weekend, and yeah.
And it was funny this week. There was a news story that I highlighted on Twitter that their San Franciscans are going nuts over these self-driving cars, and meanwhile they have driven so many miles throughout all of San Francisco. And while they're not perfect, no one's been injured, no one's been killed, and just like Jewel, the people of San Francisco don't really care.
Don't care. They don't care.
They seem to care about, or at least they pretend to care about so many things, and so many things bother them, and they actually solve not one problem that they point to. It's incredible. It's incredible. Anyhow, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If there's anything that this issue highlights, it is how dysfunctional and broken major American cities are.
Yep. Portland. No, I won't go into that. Okay, since this is a vaping show, vaping question here. If you could remove one popular flavor from vaping, which one would it be?
So
the one you just like.
Tobacco was impossible to make. And for some reason, it was just, you could never make a tobacco flavor. The only way we can have these products is if they're in fruit and candy flavors. The science just doesn't work for anything else.
The best answer yet.
There's no flavor that I would actually remove, but I do recall when I first started vaping and first had switched, I bought a flavor variety pack from electronicash.com. And one of the 12 3 milliliter bottles that they sent was pizza. And I knew I was going to hate it. But glutton for punishment, I decided to try it. The bad news was this was the days of the little foam inside the cartridges that you would drip 3 drops onto.
Yeah.
And that cartridge was wrecked after the pizza because there was no way to get rid of it. So I was tough. I remember one of my first days as a vapor, not a smoker who also vaped a little bit. That was a tough day because if I wanted to get my little puff of nicotine, I had to have mango pizza.
Oh, it was mango pizza?
No, it was pizza, but then I was no longer dripping the pizza because it was so terrible.
I see what you're saying. But was it was it supposed to be a cheese pizza, pepperoni?
Cheese and pepperoni, I feel like.
Oh, see, John wants to know if it had pineapple on it.
Did it have pineapple?
The insult would be complete at that point. But
hey, I do remember that great website. I forgot the name. Somebody in the chat probably will, but it was the one where you could make and name your own custom flavor. And it was a list that was on the website of 100,000 names, and every dirty name, every filthy thing that you could possibly think of would have a flavor. Some of those I regret not ordering just to have them in my archives.
For nostalgia's sake.
Oh yeah, and crab juice. It was not Blue. What was the crab juice company? Blue in Maryland. Great people.
God,
I forget, but it wasn't that company.
No.
Got it.
God, no. I think Craig has actually answered the question a while ago about the pineapple on pizza. I think you've done that one already. I think I remember you answering that with a hell no, right?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't think I was asked that question. I'm not rigidly opposed to pineapple on pizza, but it is not the choice. That's my politician answer. But in reality,
I was sitting to your
I
left,
could
and
eat
you felt
pineapple.
pretty
I could
opposed.
eat
at
pizza
the
with
time.
pineapple, but it would not be my first, second, or third choice.
Greg is playing both sides of the aisle there.
Safe
I
answer.
don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, what we used to do in college, we would order just cheese and onion pizzas when we would like have late night study sessions. Because if you live in a dorm, if you order a pizza, everybody comes out of their room. You know,
Yeah.
they smell it down the hall. So of course they smell the pizza down the hall, and then they come around the corner like, "You guys got pizza? Like, what'd you get?" And you're like, "Cheese and onions." They're like, "Oh no, I'm good." And then
Yeah,
they go
good.
back
Good
to the room.
strategy.
So that's a little college trick for you kids. If you can handle cheese and onions, nobody else in the dorm will bum a
That
slice
sounds
on you.
good. I've done
All I had
cheese.
to tell people was it's kosher, and they would just stay the hell away.
Oh yeah.
Truly.
What is the one band or musician you would love to party with, dead or alive?
So I feel like most of the bands that I listen to would consider me extremely uncool. So I don't think it's like kind of don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Because I'd be sitting there trying to talk to them about policy while they're doing coke.
Yeah,
So
but
I don't
you
know.
were
I could say that when I was a teenager, I was very fortunate. I had this voice from thankfully puberty, so it sounded like an adult. And when I was a teenager, I would call up. I had an affiliation with one or two like little websites, and I would call up record companies or find PR people and get free concert tickets and free
Nice.
photo passes to go backstage and such. So when I was a teenager, I did get to have some fun experiences that should not have been happening when I was 16 years old. So good times were had.
Yeah. Which one would you party with?
Well, how about this? The most interesting, the kindest, most interesting, thoughtful celebrity you've spent any time with.
Oh,
I guess. How's that?
Amy Lee from Evanescence was extremely nice.
I can buy that.
Trying to think of who it was. I will share it on Twitter because there was some story that was in the back of my head, but I've lost it. But I did have a memory today because I sold a piece of memorabilia that I got when I was 17 or 18. I was on Buena Vista Home Entertainment's mailing list, and that is Disney. And I got an invite to my email for the Scrubs Season 1 DVD party. And it was in New York City. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll go out and I'll be a photographer on a red carpet, and then I'll take a train home. And so I get out there, and there are legit news people there. There are people with real cameras. And I'm there on the red carpet looking like a 17-year-old goof. And Zach Braff comes, and the janitor comes, and the couple other cast members come. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to go home. And the person, I think it was from Yahoo, said, I think we're probably on the list. And it was at a bar in the New York City meatpacking district. And I was on the list along with the reporter. And I went in, and they had nurses, both male and female, who were only wearing painted on nurses' uniforms. I believe they also had underwear on, and handing out martinis to anyone who wanted them. So 17, 18-year-old me had my first martini inside the New York City meatpacking district at a bar that did not card me, despite this face looking actually a little younger than 17. And I just sold, or at least have an offer in. They gave as the memorabilia of the night to the press. It was essentially a cooler that they had branded Scrubs Season 1, and inside were a pair of Scrubs. So Scrubs with Scrubs on it, and some lip balm with Scrubs on it, and a couple other things. And that had sat at my grandmother's house in the basement or in the attic for 15 years. And finally decided, let's see if anyone wants it. And shockingly, someone did.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm shocked that you, at 17, you decided to order a margarita for your first, or what did you order? Martini. A martini.
Everybody was drinking martinis. They were handing them out. So I did not want to go speak to a bartender because I assumed they would then card me and my fun would be over. So at that time, it was like, I don't care what kind of alcohol it is. I'm just going to drink it.
Good move. Smart move right there.
And then the next day at school, because I go to my level like a crazy person saying that, oh yeah, last night I was in the New York City meatpacking district. I got to see Zach Braff and Mandy Moore.
I can't think of a 17-year-old who wouldn't, brag just a little bit on that one. I mean, that beats the Jewel party. Thanks very much. I mean, that's fantastic.
Oh, and speaking of Jewel, later this month, the documentary Big Vape that Netflix did that recorded with me 2 years ago in December, that's going to premiere episode 1 at the Atlantic Festival in DC. I'm guessing I'm not going to be in episode 1, so I'm not going to bother showing up. But I think it then will premiere on Netflix in October. I think that's the date. So that will be an interesting documentary. We'll see how they cut me. I may or may not have recorded my whole entire 5-hour, 6-hour interview, just in case. Cannot confirm or deny. But I definitely gave some good material. There's 1 or 2 spots where I reflect back and I'm like, oh God, an editor could have fun with that one. But I employed my usual technique. If you are ever doing a pre-recorded interview and you start to say a sentence that you don't like or that could be manipulated, just say, oh shit. Because then you can accept that, especially if it's network, and just start over. I learned that there was a wrestler. I forget
this is outstanding advice.
When I was a kid, and he said that was his technique because he didn't want take 1, take 2, take 3 to be used. He would just curse. So I take that with me.
Yeah.
I kind of want to throw you, go back in the way back train to the Washington rally. I kind of want to get your opinion. Do you think advocacy was at the highest level then, and where do you think it is today compared to that day?
Yes, because you had a natural enemy. Even people, you either had a natural enemy or a natural, oh, he should know better.
Yeah.
Because you had 50% or however many of Americans who absolutely despised Trump. And even you had the friggin' Washington Post and I think the New York Times that had editorialized against vaping so many times you can't even count. And meanwhile, because Trump was saying it, they were coming out and saying, maybe we should think harder about this issue. And then, of course, once he's gone, that nuance leaves. But then you had his diehard fans or people that just voted for him and liked him who said he got misled. He's being pushed into this, which was true. So you had that feeling of we can change this. And we did. Meanwhile, when you have a Democrat president, I think that the general feeling is, oh, these jerks, but what are we going to do? We can't change their minds. And the fact that without the vape shop community, that I wish that we never had EVALI, obviously, and that FDA hadn't decimated so many small businesses that were able to keep their doors open by selling e-liquid. But yeah, I think advocacy, because when something is new, people flock to it. And you now have, I hate to see it, but you have more and more, and it's hopefully, thankfully, a minority, but you have self-loathing vapors, the kind who, and you see them on Twitter sometimes or on social media, where vaping saved their life. They no longer smoke cigarettes, they no longer cough, etc. But now they're angry that 7 years later or 5 years later, they're still vaping, and they start making up reasons why they shouldn't be vaping anymore. So
I've seen a few of those. I don't know exactly what those people are angry at or about, but let's just say it could be a number of things. But I
will say one thing: if you went to CASA, I don't know what their response rates to call to actions are today, but I'm sure they're still quite good. If you compared the CASA response rate to even a medium attention driving call to action for a state to what almost any other issue policy group with that many members in a state, CASA's response rate is going to blow them out of the water. The vapors that care do care. And it's not just, they're not necessarily losing interest. It's just, I think, because once you have 15 million people using a product, it's a lot easier for people to say, oh, well, somebody else will do it.
Yeah. Right. I know it's impossible to do because we're not allowed to advertise, but do you think if the industry itself put out there is a way for a step down program to just kind of show that there is a way to go from it won't take me, for instance, from 18 down to 3 to 0 if you want. Do you think that would make a difference to the general public, seeing that there is a process to wean yourself away from this product?
So the problem is you have issue campaigns like California.
Yeah.
There was a gambling measure on the ballot last year.
Oh, I know all about that one.
And between the two ballot initiatives, just in California, they spent $700 million, and both of the ballot initiatives got crushed. So all the money in the world would be great, and you would need all the money in the world.
Yeah.
So just advertising alone, unfortunately, is not going to thread the needle. But I think that over time and through court cases, mostly, we're going to change things. And then it's, like it or not, this industry's here.
I can make a bet on the phone though now. I'm kidding.
Sure you can.
All that matters, John.
I just thought I'd bring that up. It took a while, but we got there. I think it's Tim or somebody. I don't know.
Well, I guess my question on the heels of that is in terms of advocacy, seeing a bit of levels of exhaustion. I think from the independents or consumer advocates, people who kind of like fought tooth and nail before. I don't think anyone's necessarily thrown in the towel. Maybe they're just sitting back a little bit more because they sort of feel like it's almost impossible to defeat big government. But do you think that government stance might be that they just hope to, like a war of attrition, that they just want to sort of just make us so tired that we just don't care anymore, and that vaping just kind of falls off the map as an element, and then they really don't have to pursue all this policy stuff? Or do you think that they'll keep trucking forward to the point where everybody's just a criminal now?
Yeah, there is not much thought put into this. There's no grand plan in terms of, if we just keep introducing this bill over and over again, eventually people will get tired. It's just the fact of life that in every state legislature, particularly certain ones, you have legislators that hate this issue, hate vaping, and they're going to reintroduce their bill. And if they get voted out or if they term out of office, well, there's another lady from Sheboygan who will run an anti-vaping bill because Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids or American Cancer Society comes to her, or a parent group. Right. This is just the reality of life that the tobacco industry has been dealing with since the 1980s. Is as much as we don't like to think of ourselves on the same plane as them, that is what legislators look at us as a arm of the tobacco industry. And they've been fortunate enough to be able to have, for each company, however many full-time employees plus full-time lobbyists that pick up some of the steam for the consumer advocates. Mm-hmm. It is not typical that an $8 billion a year industry has to ask people, can you please show up tomorrow at 12 noon at the state legislature? So this industry needs to mature, but unfortunately, the FDA situation stops that. Imagine if, even if 97% of products got banned, but 3% got authorized, you would have companies with real budgets. You would have companies with real lobbyists. But the situation is not tenable because of how the regulatory hell is. Who's going to want to invest that much?
Right. Or who can? Well, I could go on for days of how painful it is to see the people that associated us with big tobacco well before big tobacco was such a prominent player in the industry turn us over to big tobacco in every possible way. And it was years away, but you could see it coming. My question for you is, okay, they're having the SRNT, the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco in Europe conference these last few days. There's been some outstanding presentations from, is it Piney Associates or Penny Associates?
Penny.
Flo Foxen has looked at her presentation about gateway versus diversion away from smoking. Really outstanding evidence. The latest Cochrane has come out with more evidence saying that e-cigarettes are at the top of the list in terms of most effective cessation methods. Do you think any of this really encouraging information is going to make it out of Europe? I mean, it's funny. They were talking about all the different ways to make disposables sustainable environmentally. And in the same day, I think the UK came out with we're going to ban disposables. So it's been an interesting time.
Yeah, it is tough. I think eventually, one of the big things, I don't know when the next update will be, but the U.S. Preventative Task Force Services report that is often quoted, they often quote that document to say that there is not enough evidence that vaping helps smokers quit. Eventually, those authors are going to have to face, why are you so in complete opposite of the Cochrane group, period. And sometimes you get surprised where the scientists actually went out in the end and you end up with the minor incremental change. Major change is not going to come fast, but that kind of like when the CDC finally relented and started to say, yes, if you completely switch to vaping, it'll benefit your health. That didn't get noticed by many people, but over time it will. I have faith that we're going to see, as particularly as you get, even though they're going to be bad products, at least in the short term, in the next couple of years, as you get more products with PMTAs, as you get products with MRTPs, and you have big companies that are going to advertise that they have MRTPs.
And I think it was only recently that the CDC did admit, or at least come out with the whatever on their website, admitting that vaping is indeed safer than smoking, which was relatively recent, wasn't it?
I think it was the early days or the later days of the Trump administration where the CDC updated their page. They probably added and deleted some information since, but I recall that it was during the Trump years that at least that acknowledgement that completely switching is good was put on the site.
We got a question from the pirate.
Australia, I like to think that Ben Dreyfus on Twitter had a great tweet. You can take your own meaning from it, where it said if Arizona State University was a country, it would be Australia.
You just killed Phillip.
Your island continent is extremely confusing, and I do not ever like to pretend that I know the solution to other countries because every country is different. As for the media, you have to keep pushing back. You're never going to stop it. You're never going to defeat it, but you can try to get good information out there and hope that you also utilize our great public health experts, because when the media gets pushed back from vapors, they can dismiss it. When they get pushed back from Cliff Douglas, when they get pushed back from others that have their credentials beside their name, that helps. As for the health organizations, they're always going to be there, because even when Michael Bloomberg dies, I'm sure he's going to put a grant in of $1 billion or however many that'll earn interest every year, just like the Truth Initiative. And this war is only going to get worse, because as we see, and this is the next news story that some journalist is going to try to write, I'm sure. The Truth Initiative now believes in a nicotine-free society. They've gone from smoke-free, or let's get the nicotine levels down in cigarettes, to let's just completely eliminate nicotine. Yeah, that'll happen. But that's going to be the push. And it remains to be seen if cancer, heart, lung will endorse that, or if they're going to go in a different direction, because we haven't had much disagreement in the tobacco control world, the activist world, since the Tobacco Control Act was signed. The American Lung Association actually opposed the Tobacco Control Act because they wanted it to be worse. They wanted to ban more stuff. But since then, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids has very much been in charge, and it remains to be seen. I think we're setting up, and I don't have many sources on this, so I need to work on that. I think we may end up with a battle between Tobacco-Free Kids and Truth Initiative for who is the leader of the prohibitionist world.
Gosh, wouldn't you relish that?
I hope they eat their own.
Go ahead, Tim.
By the way, Australia is much more like Rutgers. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I just said I hope it does come to that, and they eat their own, and they just distract from the whole premise.
to see them fighting for the same, fighting each other to remain relevant. Absolutely, I could stand back and watch that.
Well, so it does sort of bring me to a question. So I think we have been seeing some more articles come out from reputable, medical sources. Not obviously the ones that the whole of the world seem to be beholden to follow. But I guess my question is: are you encouraged at all by some of these organizations that are doing these larger studies surrounding vaping and actually kind of coming to the table and putting that information out that they are finding that vaping has become a successful method for smoking cessation, at least in the sense that one of the articles talked about people who had no intention of quitting?
Yeah, the issue is we're getting to the place where all this research is redundant.
Mm-hmm.
We know vaping works. We know from population level, longitudinal studies, that flavors help smokers quit. We know it's not a gateway, et cetera, et cetera. We're just reinforcing what we already know at this point. But the media likes things that are new. So if we can have a new study come out every month that's positive, great, because so many of them look and see, oh, something's from 2018. Who knows what's changed in that 5 years? So I certainly don't discourage research, and you need to keep pumping. And the PMTA MRTP process is going to fuel even more research, both industry funded and not. But I think we know what we need to know at this juncture. And yeah, we should keep tracking vapors long term, but we know what we need to know.
Right. Well, I just felt like ongoing research like that, even though there is large elements of it that are redundant. I mean, things that we've heard before, you would think that, the more repetitive nature of that information coming out might help swing the tide in terms of general perceptions around vaping and maybe dispel some of the, it's as bad or worse than smoking kind of stance.
Yeah, that's the next big challenge is some company is going to get that MRTP and they are going to unleash the media, unleash advertising, put real money into it. And depending on how they phrase it, because there have been studies of MRTP labeling claims and advertising claims. And it turns out people don't really trust the tobacco industry or the nicotine industry when they say things are true. And even if they say the FDA agrees, I don't think that changes perceptions much. Right. So it's going to take a long time. Just because you have doctors, educated people, where 75% of them or however many think nicotine causes cancer. And one day, who knows, maybe by about 2029, FDA will actually be finished with their formative research on correcting nicotine misperceptions.
True. And for those who haven't read Clive Bates' latest piece, which is fantastic, that's the crux of his argument, essentially, that tobacco control has exceeded big tobacco in terms of their ability to cause harm. Is the main difference is no one trusted big tobacco. Tobacco control is coming from a place of trust, and their betrayal, it's not only based on people trusting them and believing what they say. It's also doing irreparable harm to public health agencies everywhere. And when you take people's trust and they one day will find out that you are indeed lying to them, let's just say coming from the tobacco companies, everybody's like, oh wow, how crazy is that? Tobacco companies lying to us. Well, when they find out that the Food and Drug Administration, the CDC, were indeed that full of shit, it is going to have repercussions that I myself have find very terrifying, really, because we're already seeing a drop in trust in these institutions, and well, they're not doing themselves any favors. And
I dealt with that. I encouraged people to get the COVID vaccine. I still think that it was the right thing to do, but ultimately the message I got from so many vapors was, these are the schmucks that are lying about vaping. Why the hell should I believe them? And when you have that at a large scale, whether it's on vaping or COVID-related things or any other health issue, distrust breeds more distrust. And that can be bad if the health authorities are actually giving good advice.
Yeah, unfortunately, try not to use that word anymore, guys, please, because it gets flagged on the page. So
What?
The comment.
the C word.
Oh, the C word.
Yeah, the C word. Be
Cobine.
careful. Yeah, because then they put the stamp on the video, and it's a whole process.
Charisma.
And then Phillip says this for the third time. Thanks.
Hey, he brought up the Sun Devils. I didn't say anything. What happened?
What happens is they put a link on the actual video for COVID information, and I just said it again.
Oh, you just said it
again.
Yeah, I said it again. Allie, you got a question, Allie?
So with everything that's going on, and advocacy is hard. It's a thankless job. None of us are getting paid for any of the stuff that we're doing. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We care about people quitting smoking like we did. What is some good advice that you would give to advocates to not get burned out and to keep fighting, because it does make a difference?
So for accuracy, I will say I do get paid because I have bills to pay, and this is more than a full-time job. Exactly. But
It's about time.
Burnout is real. My advice to the general advocate is you don't need to change the mind of everyone. If somebody with 30 followers on Twitter or a random Facebook comment just wants to go back and forth with you, it's okay to just say, we can agree to disagree, even though I know you're wrong. And to recognize that just because something keeps happening each year in your state does not mean that nobody's listening, because anybody can introduce a bill. It only takes one. If your flavor ban has been reintroduced 5 years in a row, that means for 4 years it was defeated. And you need to continue to do that legwork. Legislators change. Your state representative that you met with 6 years ago may be retired by now and replaced by someone else that has a completely different opinion, maybe the same party, but a completely different outlook on this issue. So you cannot move the world on the back of your shoulders. Just do what you can and know that your work is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I real quick with Dean's question, because it kind of brings up my point. I know with a lot of governments throwing out this smoke free by 2020, by 2030, 2035, is this just a political thing? It's basically a pipe dream, because I don't see this ever happening.
So it's all insane, but you have the possibility of these states and countries passing laws, as I think New Zealand did, or Malaysia, or both, where anybody after a certain date cannot purchase legally tobacco or nicotine products. And of course, plenty of people are not going to abide by the law. Good luck stopping 22 or 30-year-olds in 10 years from being able to access what they want. But something being unexecutable, if that's a word, has never stopped politicians before. And I think you're going to see California is going to do something crazy, or at least try to, in the next 2-3 years. In terms of
crazier
society.
What do you mean try? They're already on crazy. They're already on the crazy train here.
Actually,
yeah, and so that's why it's important that some research that needs to be done on the illicit market effects would be helpful, even though many of those politicians will not listen.
Yeah. I know this is wishful thinking, and I know I've asked other people this question, but is there a possibility? And I know the ain'ts don't have to listen to this, but is there a possibility that someday the manufacturers and the ain'ts sit down and actually come to some sort of agreement? Is that just a pipe dream, or is that something that could possibly happen someday?
That is a pipe dream, because they are funded.
Yeah, I know. That's the same response I get from everybody.
They sat down with Philip Morris in 2009 or 2005, 2003, wrote the Tobacco Control Act because there was no regulation. But right now, they have the regulatory system to destroy us. It's just a matter of, will judges shoot them down? Yeah. That could end up with some form of amendment, but more likely, the people sitting down with them are going to be the largest players, the tobacco industry, and not the small vapor companies. FDA is taking care of that in terms of stopping those companies from wanting or being able to have their voice heard.
At the same time, if I'm just for the sake of historical thought, the act, whether or not it gave complete authority to the FDA, it did indeed save would have otherwise been classified as a medicine, and it would have never. Yeah, I would say that vaping would have been snuffed out right from the get-go. Is that not accurate?
The part about the Tobacco Control Act giving the FDA an option to regulate vaping products in Judge Leon,
like the Enjoy suit.
That was in a footnote. That was dicta, as we call it in the legal industry. So his decision was mostly based off of Brown and Williamson Co., where the FDA previously in the 90s tried to essentially ban cigarettes by classifying them as dangerous drugs, inherently dangerous. So with or without the Tobacco Control Act, I think the legal result would have been the same, but you did have the possibility of judges looking at that and saying, oh, well, there's another option, so I feel better about ruling on the law.
It seemed like the two in the absence of the Tobacco Control Act and the giving the FDA the authority to deem and then regulate vaping products as novel tobacco products, we would have been one of two things: either I guess prescription medications, or just done right on the dot.
No, we would have been a general adult. We would have been a general consumer product with no age limits at the federal or state level. And what would have happened was the bills that got me into advocacy. 2009, 2010, there were probably about 7 different states that considered bills, including California, and Governor Schwarzenegger vetoed it before I was ever involved in advocacy. So I can't take credit for that. That would have said that no e-cigarette can be sold in this state unless it is approved as a medical device. So the states would have forced medicalization, or at least a few states. And if California and New York fell, it would have been extremely difficult, because then there would still be state laws. I don't know if maybe they would eventually be preempted. A judge would decide that by the Tobacco Control Act, and without the Tobacco Control Act, obviously not. But you would still have state laws on the books, even as the FDA is authorizing vaping products today. You would still have state laws in the books saying, no, these are all illegal because they're not drugs. Right. So that we came so close to California, a major population center that would have influenced Washington, Oregon, New York, to seeing this industry medicalized.
So it could have just been destroyed in one stroke.
Yeah.
So what it did is give us time.
Yeah. In reality, there would have been a gigantic illicit market, just as there is today, not as large as today, obviously, but there could have been eventually a forced change in laws once they realized, like marijuana, that good luck controlling this. But yeah, it would have been very bad if states had passed those medicalization laws, because it would have been difficult to turn them back.
Real quick, Greg, because I think a lot of people just know you for vaping. Is there anything else that you're involved in as far as advocacy that you're currently working on, other than vaping advocacy, I should say?
Advocacy, no. I try to keep my efforts centered solely on vaping. I am still hard at work when I have time, which is a minimal amount, on finishing a nonfiction book unrelated to vaping that I've been working on for far too long. I was working on it heavily about a month ago, late at night, and now I am knee deep in buying a house and changing up some things before I move in.
You're buying your own place? Congratulations. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. In your state? No, I'm kidding.
we forget Greg is relatively young. He's just done a lot for his years. So well done. Bravo.
And martini.
Part 2 to that question: is there anything that you see out there right now outside of vaping that you feel like you could help? I'm kind of curious to see what other interests you have outside of this industry that you feel could use your expertise and advocacy.
Have you looked at his eBay account recently? He's killing it.
No, I didn't even know he had an eBay account.
That 9-inch nails shirt could have gone for more than that.
There's some Scrubs chapstick up there.
I've got a Michael Jordan rookie card for sale if you're interested. Just saying.
Why are my baseball cards suddenly worth?
2 of them.
I have like 8 Don Mattingly rookies, not a one.
I'll throw it out there before I put it on eBay. It's starting at $10,500. So if you guys can beat that price, let me know and I'll sell it to you.
I'm out.
Shipping alone, I'm out.
Shipping. No,
Very
is
So
there any?
I find the area of zoning reform to be incredibly interesting. As somebody who would like to build a mother-in-law suite, but those are banned in the town that I'm buying a house in.
God.
I think we have a housing crisis in the United States. That's not just propaganda. That is legit, and
Yeah.
it's impacting people deeply. I also think self-driving cars are amazing invention that can save lives that are going to be faced with a lot of pushback, a lot of overregulation.
Would you get involved in something like that?
If we won on vaping, but ultimately, I
Because
think
work's cut out for him.
You're gonna
yeah,
be busy for a while.
Zoning variances
That's-
used to be my specialty, but I'm not sure about the municipality that you live in, and that's a horrible thing. But I imagine if you can show hardship, a variance is possible. I don't know.
we'll
That's
see. I
crazy.
will shake
Yeah.
babies and kiss hands before I ever
Keep doing what you've been doing, buddy.
doing such a
Keep
thing. But yeah, I've been doing this for 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
Still incredibly passionate. There's still a ton of work to be done. I think that the greater industry, even people that I've gone to war with on the tobacco side, at least respect my abilities and intellect. So I want to be around this industry. And God forbid if it all goes to hell, there will be other industries that I can look at. But for now, I think the vaping issue, spending 50 hours a week or so on that is enough for me. I'll let others handle all the other freedom issues. Freedom, and there's always going to be somebody that will step up to defend.
And what are your hobbies?
Pretty much the research for the book that I'm working on about the film industry, and that's mostly the extent of things. I like to tweet. I like to go to the gym. I'm not incredibly interesting. I was traveling a lot for a long time. That has slowed down, but I think I will. I still have 500 or 600,000 Delta Sky miles, so I think I'm going to take some.
You've done some incredible.
Yeah, you've done a lot of traveling. So I'm going to throw you one more question with the traveling. If you had to pick one of these places to live the rest of your life in, which one would you pick that you have been to?
Arizona State University campus, Tempe.
If I was single, I'd go for it.
Exactly.
So Lebanon is kind of torn by inflation and everything.
Yeah.
And, maybe not the best place to settle down, but I greatly enjoyed Lebanon. I'll have to pull up the map. All the European countries are nice, but then you get sick of them pretty quickly.
Sorry.
Japan is wonderful.
He's right.
Japan, there's a never-ending things to see and do, and the trains are fantastic. But yeah, mostly content in the United States, but the Southeast Asia, Japan area is a lot of fun.
Nice. Allie, or who's up? I lost track.
Go with Allie.
Go with Allie. Allie.
I'm so not prepared. I feel like I just asked a question.
Oh.
The what was it? The new money that the Biden administration just greenlit for the tobacco prevention. Hang on, don't let me get it wrong. So this just came out.
It's okay. I do it all the time.
The $15 million program to reduce tobacco use. What do you think they're going to do with that money? And do you honestly think that they're going to ban menthol cigarettes successfully? I'm not talking about the illicit market. I mean, like, do you think that it'll make it through?
So 15 million is a drop in the bucket. Smoke Free World had $1 billion.
Yeah, Bloomberg does bigger than that.
So that's 1/8 of a Smoke Free World year, or 1/6 of a Smoke Free World year. So I'm not too worried about the impact of $15 million, whatever they decide to spend it on. The menthol cigarette ban, I do believe that the final rule will be issued before the end of the Biden administration. Whether or not you could actually defeat that in court, Reynolds' lawyers will certainly try. But I think that the act laid out to FDA what factors they would have to consider to ban menthol cigarettes, and whether or not you support a ban or not. The fact is in Canada, you probably had, 8% of menthol smokers quit. That's not a great number, but when you're talking about a product that kills people, it's very easy to make a calculation and say, this is going to save lives. Doesn't matter if it's a ton of lives. If it saves lives, FDA can probably get away with it.
So there's
Did
evidence
they
on
quit, or
both
did they
sides.
go to an illicit market? Because there's really no way to keep track of if they were.
Yeah, I
buying
believe
from-
FDA is required when issuing a product standard to consider illicit market consequences, but I don't know how much data they have collected in California to support, or California or Massachusetts to support the idea that there is this truly illicit market. How many people are actually trucking in cigarettes from out of state versus using menthol filters or menthol flavoring things that you can buy, beads that you can buy on Amazon? That, I'm sure they'd make the argument, Reynolds and company, that is an illicit market when you're flavoring your own cigarettes and creating a new, quote unquote, new tobacco product. But that new tobacco product isn't being sold. It's the person, the individual consumer flavoring it. That's not really an illicit market. People aren't getting shot because of menthol beads. So I don't think a menthol ban is going to make a huge difference, particularly when people can make their own. But it remains to be seen. I'm sure Reynolds and company will file in the Fifth Circuit, and they may rule in their favor. And then it depends on what the Supreme Court says. And you'll end up with circuit splits because somebody will go sue in another state and get a negative decision. I'm very glad that I am not an advocate for the cigarette world. It's a tough job.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because it kind of leads to my question a little bit. Like, what's your perception, or what do you think enforcement will look like down the road? I mean, it to me, it seems a little daunting. We get bits and tastes of things here and there with, like, teenagers getting tased on boardwalks because, they had a vape in their pocket or something like that. But I mean, if it has to get worse to get better, and we have to weather the worst, do you think they're going to even be able to police or regulate it? I mean,
so the individual police interactions and such will result from state level bans, not FDA.
Right.
FDA is not going to be choking anybody out on the street, but the NYPD may very well do it.
Right.
The thing is with cigarettes, when you are operating in the illicit market in cigarettes versus vaping products, you are bringing in a whole lot of enforcement agencies that are not involved in vaping or don't care much about vaping. You're talking ATF, you're talking state tax administrators,
Massachusetts.
You're talking various interstate commerce laws. There is going to be more than the FDA that will be concerned about that, because when you have an illicit market for menthol cigarettes, people aren't putting their tax stamps on them. Right. So that's when you're going to get men with guns, and the men with guns probably aren't going to go after Joe on the street corner in Harlem. They're going to go after the guy that is bringing a giant truckload, just as they do today, into New York City, into Massachusetts.
Right.
So I don't think that we're going to get the case of the FDA agent choking a 19-year-old to death, but there's going to be some enforcement, and it'll be interesting to see how FDA prioritizes, because as you can see from any FDA release, FDA does not know the definition of prioritize. Because
they can throw the RICO Act at all those people too.
We are prioritizing enforcement against flavored pod products that didn't file PMTAs, products that filed for PMTAs but got denied, and synthetic nicotine products. So in other words, they are quote unquote prioritizing 2 million different products.
Yeah.
So FDA does not have unlimited resources, but once something is banned at the federal level, you're going to see the state level bills, because if it's banned at the national level, BAT, Altria, et cetera, will not be manufacturing menthol cigarettes anymore for the U.S., and that's where they care about. So they're going to also support laws to take out the scofflaws, because they want people to smoke unflavored cigarettes or switch to vaping.
Right.
So maybe it's not a coincidence that Massachusetts is pushing for higher cigarette and cigar taxes at the same time they're spending more and more money on their illicit tobacco task force. I think they banned all flavored tobaccos a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, 3. I think it was post Diwali or during Diwali.
Yeah.
I don't know how much
enforcement money. I don't think that bill is going to go anywhere particularly. If they wanted it to go somewhere, they wouldn't have included cigars.
It sounds like they're putting a fair amount of they're having to put in more resources into policing and looking after their borders and seizing out of state tobacco that's flavored or whatever than I imagine most they would like. And it seems that's a pretty decent case study for the federal government to look at and see what the upsides and perhaps downsides are.
Yeah, convincing the federal government that it doesn't have the resources or know-how or ability to ban something is historically very tough. Government does not like to hear, "Oh, we're going to the scofflaws are going to defeat you." Doesn't matter how many times the scofflaws do defeat them. They're going to say, "Well, this time will be different."
So dubious situations in a microcosm, it's not going to do anything for their
and they look and they use dumb examples, like they're saying, "Oh, a bunch of states banned powdered alcohol and there's no black market for that." Well, there was no established market for those products.
Yeah.
When you have an established market, when you have consumer demand, when you have consumers that understand the differentiation between the products they're banning and the products they're allowed to have, that's when you get true blue illicit markets.
It's Massachusetts. It's a Commonwealth. Okay. I think I do have one final question for you. The notion of a low nicotine mandate federally, I think what we've seen with 22nd Century and their VLN launch, can you just very briefly what you know about how extensive their soft, very low nicotine cigarette launch was, and more importantly, how quickly their massive company went belly up and their stock is worth nothing because no one was buying them. Can you tell us a little bit more about that as a whole?
So in reality, the VLN cigarettes, I don't think anybody at 22nd Century thought that they were going to make enough money off those test markets or off the Illinois and Colorado or wherever they opened them, that it was going to become this force and it was going to be in every retail store in America. Their game has always been, we need to raise enough money to make it until FDA either mandates these things or the threat of a mandate is so high that PMI or BAT or whoever beats us so that they can continue to manufacture these products. Meanwhile, while in the 10, 15 years since they had the idea for this company, harm reduction has come along. And all of a sudden you have companies talking about a smoke-free future where they recognize, there's a threat of this very low nicotine thing. But the secret to success in a post-VLN world is not going to be selling VLNs. It's going to be selling smoke-free nicotine products that hopefully don't also get banned. So they're running out of money. The outlook for the VLN law is not strong. However, I do think that they very well could return to it if there is a second Biden administration term or Harris administration or whoever, because this situation, they always want to propose something new. So even though they'll be claiming that the menthol cigarette ban is the biggest change in the world that'll benefit public health for years to come, it'll only be a couple of years until they want to do it again.
So their fall from grace is probably a bit or as much to do with speculation as it is from real world evidence that adult smokers don't want their product.
Yeah, it's all speculation. All their stock value was, wow, Scott Gottlieb talked about this, so obviously it must then be happening. And then Mitch Zeller or Brian King talked about it, so this is going to happen. And lo and behold, it turns out the government functions a little differently than just, the government says something's going to happen. There's a lot to it.
So in reality, it was not in a test market large enough for long enough to really ascertain whether or not it could have become.
So I'm sure they have internal numbers, but they didn't release them. The only thing they released, as Clyde Bates has noted, was how many cartons of cigarettes they've manufactured. And they own a tobacco manufacturing plant, and they probably manufacture for little like secondary, third brands that you never hear of because they have small market share, but they still exist. Discount cigarettes and such. So there's no way, as far as I know, to differentiate between their manufactured cigarettes and their own cigarettes.
But they do have sales data that they've chosen not to share. It's not the best sign.
Yeah, it's not a great sign. And I especially laughed that at the same time that they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions, you have the hemp companies releasing hemp cigarettes that it turns out nobody wants. Nobody actually wants to smoke cigarettes that don't give you any nicotine, turns out, even if it's hemp. But I did laugh heartily when you started to see ads for hemp cigarettes saying no nicotine.
All right, guys, we're about out of time here. I'm going to buy a few packs.
Ben Affleck was sending out cartons, and like I said, you should have got Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We are just about out of time. I want to thank Greg for joining us tonight and sticking out for the whole 2 hours. We appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope to have
Thank
you
you,
back
Greg.
on when you have some time. I know you're really busy. And I want to thank everybody out in chat as well for always joining us and throwing out those questions. And I will let Tim say his goodbyes.
Yeah, no, I always love having you on the show, Greg. Your insight, your knowledge, you really have a lot to bring to each and every show, which is refreshing for us. But I mean, ultimately, I appreciate everything you do day in and day out, and we're behind you 110%. So, got our full support here. So, thank you for coming on the show again tonight.
Well, thank you, everybody in the audience. Anyone who's responded to a call to action, gone to a legislative hearing, called up their politician. Thank you, because my voice is loud and boisterous, but it is not the only thing that brings about change. I am not worth much without the vapors behind me.
Yeah, Allie.
Thank you, Greg. As usual, you're amazing to have on, full of information. I'm glad to be on your team, and I appreciate you coming on here with us. And
I think I'm technically on your team.
It's our team.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I just agree with her just to avoid any trouble.
It's important that you agree with Allison always.
That's good.
Otherwise, bad things are going to happen.
Forget about it. Phillip, you're up, buddy.
Well, Greg, I won't gush too long. I consider you a good friend and a tremendous human being. And Deirdre just texted me to say, I hope Greg is well and taking care of himself and not working too hard. And of course, I lied and said, he's all, he's sitting in a lounger somewhere, in the islands. So what I wanted to say is, looking back at some of those extraordinarily, I don't think about this very often, but you were thrown onto a lot of those televised nationwide debates with some of the most truly intimidating people in public health. And let's just say, having watched them for the first time in a long time, you held yourself as well as anyone ever could have. And for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful that you were the one who ended up in that chair. People remember the body bags line, but I remember every chance that you gave him not to drive you into a corner where you had to lay him out. So well done.
Yeah, as I said, there was the Shepard Smith interview the day before I went on with Dr. Gupta on CNN, where, God bless Tony Abood, big friend of mine, but he decided his tone was to be conciliatory, say the industry is working on this. We don't believe we're responsible, blah, blah, blah. And Shepard Smith just treated him like he was the devil.
Yep.
And so going into that Gupta interview, going into Chris Cuomo, I know I'm in my best place when somebody thinks I'm the devil, and I try to counter them. If somebody wants to do a friendly interview, there are 20 other people that I would suggest before me. But in terms of going into the lion's den, I'm always glad for it because I know I'm right.
Yeah. Excellent. Again, thank you, everybody out there in chat, and we will see everybody next week. Thank you, Tim, Allison, Phillip, and Greg as well. And we'll see everybody next week. Peace out.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.